So our scripture passage today is from the Gospel of John, the first chapter, verse 23 through 26. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Can anything good come out of Nazareth? So, in the last year, the most popular podcast ever, in fact, 10 million downloads in the first 4 days. It was a podcast called S-Town. I'm not going to finish that word because I'm assuming you can figure out what that is. But it's S-Town podcast, and it's relevant today because John and I served in Birmingham. I served in Birmingham, and John was the pastor of Woodstock, Alabama. What this podcast is about, what S-Town is about, is Woodstock, Alabama. It focuses on John B. McLemore, his life and story, and people make a lot of assumptions about an S-Town and about the people that live there, and John does not meet any of those. He's a gay man, rather closet in Woodstock, Alabama. That's very rural Alabama. But he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. He's a horologist. Anybody know what a horologist is? I didn't know until I listened to this podcast. Is someone that repairs clocks. Now that sounds like no big deal, but the art of clockmaking is ancient, and it's also really, really tedious. Not every clock was made the same way. There's no mechanized way to do things, and so clocks are really, really complicated, and clocks can be really old, and so you kind of have to you have to understand a lot of different things and about mechanics to become a horologist. And there's very few in all the world, and he was one of them. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you the tale of John B. because you may actually download S-Town and enjoy the series yourself. But know that it's a lot about prejudice. It's a lot about racism, and especially about Southern poverty. So you could say, can anything good come out of Woodstock, Alabama? Equivalent to our can anything good come out of Nazareth? And this podcast will let you do what the gospel says. This podcast will let you come and see. Come and see what Woodstock is about. So I'll leave you with that. But the phrase, can anything good come out of Nazareth? We judge people based on where they're from. We do it rather naturally, but it is poison. And maybe you've heard the phrase, poison the well. What that means is that, a well has been poisoned, and you should not drink any of it, right? You should not even taste it to see if it's poisoned. There should be a sign on it, it's poisoned well. And so when we make prejudice about where someone is from, it's as if the well has been poisoned. So we hear where they're from, and we don't hear anything else. So the well is poisoned. So we can't, it gets us off the hook where we don't have to take them seriously. Now, John and I moved from the South, from Alabama, to Oregon now almost 16 years ago. And we were afraid of this. We were afraid people would hear we were from Alabama and they wouldn't take us seriously. What kind of preachers can we be if we're not taken seriously? They'll hear, oh, they're from Alabama. They're from Hick Town, Hick Country, down south, and so surely they won't take us seriously. And there were critical moments where that was questionable. We came out for a visit to meet our churches and met with the SPRC, and one of the men asked me, he said, how do you pronounce this state that we are in? And I'm from the South. He was expecting me to get it wrong, right? He expected me to say, Oregon. This is Oregon, right? Well, that's the way my mother says it. I still can't correct her. Still can't get her to say it differently. But Oregon. And when I said it, it's like I had passed some test. Because Southern Hicks, surely nothing good can come out of there, right? Nothing good can come out of Alabama. But I want you to know that you think my accent is bad now. That first year in Ontario, it was so thick, and they really did have to work hard to understand me, bless their hearts. But we should not disqualify people based on where they're from, and I know we do that. But it is an example of poisoning the well, making judgments. And so the response to that poisoning the well, is the response that Philip had, which is, come and see who that person really is. So the passage is set in John, and John has a slightly different order of Jesus' life than the other three Gospels. So it starts off with, I am the Word, and the Word is born. And then Jesus goes and visits John, and then he gathers up for 2 days, he gathers up some disciples. And the first couple that he gathers follow him from visiting John the Baptist. John proclaims him as an important person, and so they follow him. And he turns around and says, what are you doing? And out of curiosity, they said something really stupid. They said, well, we're just wondering where you're going to sleep tonight. And so Jesus says to them, come and see. And then we have this story of a couple of other people become disciples, and one of those people, Philip, goes and finds somebody else. We have found him, which has been said, all these great things that was predicted, and here he is, and it's Jesus from Nazareth. And Nathaniel says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? He just shuts down that great acclimate, and he just shuts it down. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? And then Philip says the very thing that Jesus had said before. It's almost like the words were Jesus to Nathaniel instead of from Philip. You can almost hear Jesus reaching through and saying the very same thing. Come and see. Come and see. Now, it's not unique in this passage for Jesus to say things like, come and see. We hear it also in the Good Samaritan. Jesus did not have to identify a Samaritan as doing the good work. It could have been just anonymous anyone that, decided to help instead of not help. But no, Jesus specifically said a Samaritan, because he was that kind of person that would have been something someone would have said of a Samaritan. Can anything good come out of Samaria? And so Jesus picked out that nationality, that culture, to honor and appreciate and say, yes, something good can come out of Samaria as well. So throughout Jesus' life, Jesus did a come and see in his stories as well. can anything good come out of Nazareth? We do that. We meet somebody new, and where are you from? If they're from a red state or a blue state, we start making assumptions. We start going down a certain path about what we think we know that person is or thinks or stands for. This weekend, today is Martin Luther King presentation this afternoon, and of course tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day. May I never miss a year without mentioning how important having a holiday is for someone like that. I say that because I'm from a state that when Martin Luther King Day was nationally honored, that they established a Robert E. Lee Day as a holiday for the same day. So may I always honor that tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day, and Martin Luther King had a high priority in the civil rights, in that integration of people that are different. And building relationships is the feet on the ground, come and see work. And that was really evident in the Freedom Riders. Maybe you've heard that word, but you might not know what it was. Well, the Freedom Riders were a busload of people that would go from one demonstration, one civil rights act, one cause to another. And you never knew who was going to be on the Freedom Rider bus, but you could sure count on it being different and diverse, because there were Christians of all colors, but there were also Jews. There were people from all different walks of life that would come from all over the country that would come and be bussed around to make a difference in the South, to make their voices known where it really mattered. But it was in action, them coming together and seeing where they could stand and make a difference. And sometimes it was at their own life and risk of health. Some of the buses were burned at times. So Jesus, throughout the Gospels, throughout his life, attempted to tell us not to make decisions without relationships. I cannot tell you how profound that is. Do not make a decision without having a relationship connected to that decision. In other words, every issue has a face and a heartbeat and a life. I'm on the board of our community health, Rogue Community Health. I don't have the numbers of how many people we serve, but I can tell you, as a governing board member, we are really worried about Measure 101. In fact, we have 3 different budgets ready for 2018 to unfold. If Measure 101 is not passed, it could potentially mean 30% reduction in our budget. It could mean 50% reduction in our budget. And beyond that, we are really not sure. Measure 101 has a face, and it really matters. If you have not voted, please vote. What I'm also certain of is that there are people in this room that are really seriously worried about whether Measure 101 passes. It matters in their life. So it has a face, it has a heartbeat. So you need to come and see. Put a face on a decision. Because we're bad in this country about labeling. We might say things like this: what kind of people need Medicaid? And Jesus would respond, come and see. Maybe someone would say, what kind of people don't have a place to lay their head at night? And Jesus would say, come and see. Maybe you've heard, what kind of people would come to church for a bag of free food? And Jesus would say, come and see. What kind of parent could have a child and not have the means to take that child to the doctor when that child is sick? And Jesus would say, come and see. Elsewhere in the Gospels, in Matthew 25, Jesus makes another come and see statement. He says, he has two groups of people, and he's divided all the people into sheep and goats. And he says, you cared for me when I was hungry, when I was thirsty, when I was a foreigner, when I was naked, when I was sick, when I was in prison. Because truly, I tell you, just as you did it for the least of these, you did it for me. This is another come and see passage in the gospel. When the least of these is hungry and we give Jesus food, we come and see. When the least of these is thirsty and we give Jesus something to drink, we come and see. When the least of these is a foreigner and we welcome him, we come and see. When the least of these is naked and we give Jesus clothing, we come and see. When the least of these is sick and we take care of them, we are acting out of that come and see. When the least of these is in prison and we visit Jesus, we are acting in response to a come and see. So it may have been Philip that said it, but Jesus said it first. And it feels like this is the very voice of Jesus through Philip. Come and see. May we hear it as the very voice of Jesus to us today. You know, what's amazing about Jesus' ministry and message, it's a message that is not located in a democracy. What that means is everything that Jesus asked his disciples to do, it was always under the rule of a king that could have changed and done whatever the king wanted to do. So whatever Jesus did, it was always one-on-one. But we live in a democracy. What we do can affect many. If Jesus was saying this to us today, who live in a democracy, surely it would include the power we have to respond as Christians when we vote to help the least of these. I was in need, and you voted to help me. Amen. Let us stand for our closing hymn, We Shall Overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
We shall overcome all together in unison. Ready? We shall overcome. Amen. Amen. Hey,